Hello everybody, so if you watched my video yesterday, you might have heard that I was going to have a bit of a different video today, and that's because I'm going on a little bit of a journey, and I figured I should make a video journal on it if I will. Um, so I've been playing video games since I was 5 years old, playing on my Game Boy, or rather my brother's Game Boy, and then he'd get mad when he found out I was playing it. Um, so obviously I'm very into video games. That's pretty common for people of my generation. I think that's no surprise to anybody. I reference them a lot, things like that. And I'd always wanted to make games, right? Because I think they're a great medium for telling stories, for just having a great experience. So, but I never really took the leap of faith, right? And I didn't want to buy a big expensive engine or something and then realize, oh, I can't do this. This is too complex for me. But then I found this game engine called Godot, or Godot. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. But it's a free open source engine that anyone can use. So I've been using that. Very, very early steps, right? I followed a tutorial just to get the very basics down, and have been slowly shipping at it since then. But I figured I would just get distracted and confused if I didn't write down my thoughts. So here we have sort of a dev log, I guess you could call it. This one up here is way too big, but that's irrelevant. This covers a lot of the core mechanics of the game, the core ideas of the game. So pretty standard. You're going to have a health and an energy bar in gameplay. It's going to be a 2D action kind of game, action platformer. Health is how much damage you can take, and energy will be used for different actions, like your ranged weapons, magic, and launchers for combos. Because there's going to be some light combo mechanics in this game. Again, I'm very new to all this, so I'm not trying to change the world. I'm trying to make a very solid game, though. You can see that here in this very poorly drawn diagram using stick figures. The game will be centered sort of around 3-hit combos. And I want the combos to feel very heavy. Like when you hit someone, I want it to feel crunchy and satisfying. So big hit stun, things like that. Satisfying sound effects. And the game will center around these 3-hit combos. Even after the point where you start to get more specialized combos, because they'll all sort of center around this, for melee combat at least. So part of that as well would be the launcher system, which would be nothing crazy, right? We're not talking fighting game level combos, but if before the third hit, which would be sort of your finisher hit, right, it would send enemies back, it would do the most damage. If you hold down while doing that, you would get a launcher instead, which you could then jump to follow up with to do more damage. And of course, this would change with your skill tree, which we're going to cover later. I'm not sure if I call it a skill tree, like a skill path, I guess would be a better word. But going into the core loop of the game. The game sections begin at your desk, like in your house, if you will. And across your desk come these envelopes that contain your objectives, right? Optional objectives. So you open them, you look through them, and you select which quests to take on, right? So you could choose as many or as little as you want to a reasonable extent, right? You still have to choose, I'd say, at least one, because then you could just, maybe you should just be able to pick none, right? Just speedrun the game, get the nothing ending. Now, these quests would affect two different stats, aside from your health and energy and your offensive stats. Respect and fear, which we're going to get into more in a bit, which I think could be a very interesting core mechanic for my game. Not necessarily a core mechanic, but sort of how the story is told. Because I don't want to make, I'm a solo dev that's very new to this, so I'm not trying to make, Red Dead Redemption 2. But that respect and fear mechanic plays into the town sections, which would be at the beginning and end of each sort of expedition when you take your objectives. You go to the town, buy any equipment you need, and then you go off, and then when you get back, you can turn in, things like that. In these towns, you have various shops which sell equipment, which sell consumable items, health potions, energy potions, things like that. And part of what I wanted was to have some actual interesting characters there that actually that change, right? They're not just an unchanging sort of in limbo state characters like you see in a lot of farming games. I want something that feels like these characters actually react to what's happening. They change as you do. And part of that will be the fear and respect. And with we'll get more into that when we cover that core mechanic, but I also wanted to include sort of smaller optional objectives in the town, so you could talk to like a shopkeeper that's like, say, an older woman who's like, hey, my husband went missing so-and-so years ago in the place you're going to. Can you go find him or see what happened to him? Things like that, that just add extra background to the world. In terms of the levels, at first I was thinking I'd do a very linear, like 30 stages or something like that, but I've realized that could get very repetitive for someone who's not that familiar with making each level feel unique. So what the path I'm thinking of going down is more like Mario 64 almost, where you have these very large maps with these multiple objectives in them that you spend a few sections in game in. And as you progress, more areas in those large maps unlock, right? So that's sort of what I'm going for. I'm not sure the exact amount. I'm not sure if it's going to be like 5 or if it's going to be 8. But that's sort of the plan right now. So going on to the respect and fear mechanic that I've mentioned a few times. So respect is gained from doing things people find admirable. That could be helping a family deal with haunting or with a monster problem. And if people respect you, you'll have access to more stock, more items to buy, more items. Shopkeepers will throw in bonuses, like, oh, you've done so much here, take this potion for free, or take this for free, or whatever it may be. And I want that to play into, you could become friends with these people, have actual, like, your character and their character actually get along, right? It's not just a one-sided text box kind of deal. Which would play into one of the endings. I plan for there to be, like, 3 endings. One for like high respect, and then the other for high fear, and then one that sort of falls in between. I want them to have an inverse relationship, right? So things can't just get ruined if you make one mistake. So if you have high respect, you'll take proportionally less fear from doing something people would find fearful. So if you have, they inverse relationship. So on the other hand, you have fear. Fear is gained for doing jobs people would find unjustified, like wiping out a group of like a woodland village creatures, like a village of woodland creatures, right? To make way for a mine, or just to open up the land for somebody, right? And these are not. I'm not saying like killing bandits or something like that. These jobs will generally pay more, but of course, the townsfolk will start to think, "Ooh, you're a little bit off-putting." So they'll offer less things to buy, right? Just the bog standard with less inventory. Though the benefit is that you can just intimidate them into giving you things for extremely low prices. And it would have the same inverse relationship with the respect. The higher your fear, the less respect you gain from doing respectful things. There are also certain perks in the skill trees that affect these skills as well. Excuse me. Had a bit of phlegm in my throat or something. So that covers pretty much the very core of the game, right? 3-hit satisfying combos that you can extend in various ways. Respect and fear playing integrally into how you get more equipment and things like that. And large worlds with multiple objectives in them, instead of many shorter worlds that would have more of a start and end, and start and defined. Oh my god, I'm having a stroke. A defined start and end point. That's the general view. Of course, very early on in development, a lot of these things could change. I'm still using like all placeholders. I'm still getting health and stuff down. So things are very likely to change. But let's move on to the second of these. So number 2, much more reasonably sized. This goes more so into the gameplay. So as you can see again by this very poorly drawn chart here, hold on, let me click that away. You have 9 perks up to level 3, right? This would be 1, 2, 3, and then 4, so on, right? Each level unlocks a new area. The first 3 perks would be generally more generalist. This would be more generic stat buffs, movement speed, damage reduction, attack speed, attack damage, and these can be freely changed around, right? But the way I'm planning it is that each skill point can only be used in its own level. So, for example, a level 1 skill point can only be used on the first level, 2 on 2, 3 on 3, etc. But at level 4, you pick a specialization. Now, these skills are split into 2 major groups that affect what equipment you can use, and also your playstyle, of course. So, The two groups are weapons and magic. These perks will be more specialized and probably less like cross-choice things. I'm thinking maybe every few levels you can pick, either tree can pick one of the perks. But again, these things are liable to change. I still need to get the I need to like fully program it before I get into the point of being like, yeah, you can pick any perk at any time. So let's get into the 4 skill trees. Or I keep calling them skill trees, not trees. They're paths, really. Very linear. I think it's just going to be less spaghetti code for me to deal with. So first up you have magic, which is represented by purple in this rough diagram. So magic would increase the amount of energy you have and unlocks more spell effects, which could then be customized. For example, you could take a beam and change the effect it has on someone when you hit them with it. Or create, say, like a spell where you get a rotating shield or something like that. But outside of that, you're going to get very minimal close combat. You'll be using the same 3-hit combo you did before level 4, and its damage will not increase at all. Then the alt path for magic would be the monk. Short-ranged attacks and powerful timed buffs is the main thing, right? So when you, say, right-click, that you would go into meditation, and you get to pick a buff, which could be, major damage reduction for a short time. Extended range, or like a spirit to fight with you. And I also plan for him to have some sort of maybe a parry mechanic, I think could be very fun. And the ability to exchange health for short-range projectiles that are very very heavy on knockback. Which, I'm just going to be honest, is like a reference to like the Tri-Beam or the Shinki Koho, right? Use your health to hit enemies back. But beyond that, I'd say they would have very minimal ranged capabilities, except for the short area in front of them, and they must balance their timed buffs because they would be very cost intensive, right? So you can't just keep spamming, say, damage reduction. You could use damage reduction, but once you're out, you're going to have to let your energy recharge before you can reapply that buff. Then jumping over to the secondary skill path, if you will, we have the melee ones, or the alternative. They're not primary, secondary, it's just... First up, we have the sword path. So the first of the melee paths, it replaces your combos with long-reaching swords that reward your spacing to extend combos. And I'm toying with the idea of maybe getting your vulnerability frames if you time things right. And it would boost single big hitting guns like sniper rifles or cannon blasts, things like that. But less survivability perks. So with the sword, what it would be, right, is 3-hit combo, of course. But what I'm thinking is your sword has a sweet spot at the tip of the blade, where if you finish your combo and someone's at the tip of the blade, they get launched automatically a smaller amount, which then allows you to do a short hop and continue the combo. And if you keep the spacing right, you can repeat this again. It'd be very rhythmic and very fluid in the way you do it. Of course, still maintaining the regular launchers, but if you don't use the regular launchers, you can conserve your energy. And the perks would, again, affect things like the sniper rifle, which I plan for, or the sniper like family of weapons, if you will, is like a huge beam that pierces through enemies. So, right, you can combo up an enemy really fast, with the high attack speed, and then you can blast through them with a sniper rifle. But in exchange, you would get minimal increases to your health. You wouldn't really get anything to increase your survivability. I think it would be a very fun path to go down, and we'll get into the fear and respect aspects of these perk trees in a moment. So the hammer is the second path of melee, which will be slow and short-ranged heavy damage attacks with extreme hit stun, right? So hitting people will make them stagger back at all unarmed attacks. I do find in a lot of 2D action games, tank builds are really bad, like they just don't work, and I want to fix that, right? Because I love tank builds personally. So the way I'm thinking of doing that is by having multiple sources of damage reduction that apply multiplicatively, which can lead to massive damage reduction. But probably also debuffing your movement speed, so you wouldn't be able to dodge attacks, but you could just eat them much easier. In terms of his other perk benefits, it would affect things that are rapid fire, like Gatling guns, auto cannons, scatter guns, things like that shoot very rapidly. For example, energy will only be spent every 5 attacks, so long as you keep shooting. This would prevent it from working on things like the sniper rifle, because it would have to be continuous, but the sniper rifle would have maybe a 3-second cooldown before you can shoot it again. Now, in terms of fear and respect for these perks will, of course, play into that mechanic. With the melee tree starting off with boosts to respect, but what I plan is for a sort of steampunk aesthetic almost, for a sort of hybrid fantasy steampunk kind of deal. And as you progress along your melee perk tree, you'll start to replace more of your body with these steampunk mechanics, right? You'll replace your arms, you'll replace parts of your body, and that is understandably unsettling when you replace an entirety of your arm with a sword. So while you will at first get big boosts to respect because the imagery of sword fighting heroes has always been there, as you modify your body, people are like, "Ooh, okay, this is getting a little creepy. Why are you doing that?" And the same thing would apply to the hammer, right? In terms of the magic trees, you'd actually start off with doses of fear. Because think about it, like you're an apprentice mage or an apprentice monk who is really, like, they're a big shut-in, right? They're constantly studying, constantly meditating, so they don't have a lot of time to talk to people and things like that. So people are wary of you. But as you progress along your perk tree, you become more respected as a wise, member of the community. So people are like, okay, yeah, we respect you. I don't plan for either of these to be so debilitating that you cannot get one of the endings with the other, but I think that is a sensible thing to do. I want things to react to it. Now, moving on to equipment, I'm not doing full, helmet, gauntlets, chest plate, pants, boots. I'm not going that route. I'm going for a single equipable. Alongside consumables. So for the magic path, you'd have gauntlets, right? These wouldn't really add any extra attacks because your alternative fire would be replaced with your spells, with your meditation. But they would offer things like faster energy regen, faster movement speed, damage reduction or damage multiplication, or damage increases, things like that, right? So you would be wearing these and they would give you benefits. And then for the melee classes, as we mentioned, the ranged weapons, the guns, would be just kind of a variety of firearms. I've got 5 pictured here, very crudely drawn, I know. But you have pistols, which would be the basic, right? That's just the one you always have before level 4. It would be a moderate fire rate, medium damage kind of weapon. But then you have the sniper rifle, which we already went into, right? That would be a one with a long cooldown, but when you fire it, right, it can pierce through enemies and do a lot of damage. So if there's a big group of enemies coming your way, you can line it up and pierce shot through them. And I'm thinking maybe it has some sort of collateral bonus. So, for example, say there's a big tanky enemy behind a swarm of lesser enemies. If you pierce through all those lesser enemies, it would do increasingly more damage to then, boom, one-shot the tanky guy. Next up, we have the sort of cannons, or the blunderbuss, whatever you want to call it. This would be a short-range scattergun, right? You would shoot out a cone of projectiles, sort of like the scattergun from Contra. That would do very good damage, especially if you get all the pellets to connect, and would be just general purpose, right? It sprays out, that means it can hit enemies above you, below you, if you need to get someone off you. Probably give the bullets a lot of knockback, comparative to the rest of the weapons. So that's where that would sort of fit in. And then you have the Gatling, or rapid fire gun. This would be a very fast firing, low damage, low knockback, but of course, you can fire it just continuously, pretty much, until you run out of energy. So especially with the hammer path, you could just be hosing enemies down with this. It would be good for clearing mobs. I'm thinking maybe it has some sort of benefit, maybe for repeated hits, like slowing enemies down, so that you can lock people down if you can keep up the fire. And then finally, we have the autocannon path. This is just because I really like autocannons. This would be sort of the jack of all trades, almost. It would have a moderate fire rate, so fast enough to proc the skills of the hammer class, and it would fire slow moving. It would fire slowly, but each projectile would explode on impact, right? Big damage. So this would be very good for clearing hordes and dealing generalist damage at any range. But of course, it wouldn't be as general purpose as a lot of the other. It wouldn't be as focused as a lot of the other weapons, right? And it can also, since it explodes on impact, you could waste it, right? So you're shooting at someone, and then a grunt enemy falls down, and it gets smacked with it. Boom, you just wasted a shot. And I would plan for it to have a very heavy energy cost, right? So it would be, again, very powerful in a lot of circumstances, but has its weaknesses. So that covers pretty much the core idea for the game. No title yet, work in progress, I guess. And right now I'm working with a lot of placeholder stuff. I want to get the core movement, attacks. I want to get all of that done, and I want to work on like the perk framework, and then I'll start delving in, making the big levels, things like that. And I plan to just pump out updates as I make them. I hope you're all interested. In terms of like release date or price point, no idea. Price point depends on how many people I take on board, but I'd say probably at most like $10. I don't think this is going to be, I don't think this game is going to be worth like $50 or anything like that. Maybe even less than $10 if I do everything myself. But I do want there to be good music, so I'll probably have to get someone to do that because I'm not a musician. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought down below, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.